والسلام علي يوم ولدت ويوم أموت ويوم أبعث حيا.
الحمد لله رب العالمين. الحمد لله الذي خلق السماوات والأرض وجعل الظلمات والنور ثم الذين كفروا بربهم يعدلون. هو الذي خلقكم من طين ثم قضى أجلا وأجل مسمى عنده ثم أنتم تمترون. وهو الله في السماوات وفي الأرض يعلم سركم وجهركم ويعلم ما تكسبون. وعنده مفاتح الغيب لا يعلمها إلا هو ويعلم ما في البر والبحر وما تسقط من ورقة إلا يعلمها ولا حبة في ظلمات الأرض ولا رطب ولا يابس إلا في كتاب مبين. وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. ثم أما بعد. In the last khutbah we reached verse number 10 of Surah Al-Hujurat, which says إنما المؤمنون إخوة فأصلحوا بين أخويكم واتقوا الله لعلكم ترحمون. All you who have faith, know that believers are nothing but brothers. فأصلحوا بين أخويكم واتقوا الله لعلكم ترحمون. That's the definition that Allah gives to the Muslim community. It's a community of brothers. That's the relationship that they have to each other. But you see, the Quran does not introduce the concept of brotherhood as just a word. It's not just a word, it's action. It's an attitude, it's a behavior. The next verse tells us that this brotherhood has to be lived. It's not just something that we talk about, but something that we literally live. The next two verses talk about 6 diseases that exist in communities. Muslim communities, non-Muslim communities, 6 major diseases that have the capacity to undermine those communities. The first verse discusses 3 of those diseases. The next one discusses 3 other diseases. The first 3 ones discuss diseases that we do in front of each other. And the next verse discusses 3 other diseases that we often do behind each other's back. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling us in those 3 verses that if you really want to become truly believers, truly brothers, then you have to keep away from those things. The things that you do in front of each other and things that you do behind each other's backs. The first 3, the verse says, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا لَا يَسْخَرْ قَوْمٌ مِّنْ قَوْمٍ عَسَىٰ أَنْ يَكُونُوا مِّنْهُمْ. O you who have faith, do not make mockery of each other. Perhaps the people you are mocking are better than you in Allah's eyes. And then the Quran particularly addresses women. وَلَا نِسَاءٌ مِّن نِسَاءٍ عَسَىٰ أَنْ يَكُنَّ خَيْرًا مِّنْهُنَّ. It says even with women, the same thing. Normally the Quran addresses both in one sentence. In this verse, the Quran addresses both in 2 different sentences to emphasize that this is so common. وَلَا نِسَاءٌ مِّن نِسَاءٍ عَسَىٰ أَنْ يَكُنَّ خَيْرًا مِّنْهُنَّ. And let no group of women mock other groups of women. Perhaps in Allah's eyes, the women that are being mocked are better in Allah's eyes. This phrase has a context to it. You remember a couple of khutbahs ago we were talking about Banu Tamim, the people who came to the Prophet ﷺ, and they raised their voices in the house of Allah, in the Masjid of the Prophet ﷺ. And there was, at the beginning of Surah Al-Hujurat begins by addressing those people that you cannot raise your voice in a mosque. يا أيها الذين آمنوا لا ترفعوا أصواتكم فوق صوت النبي. That's not how you act in a masjid, right? And the Quran educates that community about the ethics of behavior in a mosque and in the presence of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The very same people, they committed another mistake. They came to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam after the prayer was finished, and they realized that there was a group of people sitting with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. جاءوا إلى رسول الله فوجدوا حوله بلالا وعمارا وخبابا وصهيبا وسلمان. So they came to the Prophet ﷺ and they found the closest people that were sitting next to him was Bilal, who was a slave, a black slave. Salman, who was not an Arab, someone nobody knows his family, who his family was. Suhaib, the same thing, not an Arab, nobody knows him. Khabbab, a very poor man, Abdan. So استخفوا بهم, they looked down on them. وقالوا من يجمع حوله. Look at him, how, look at the people he is literally surrounding himself with. It's either slaves or people who are not from within our community, they are not natives, so to speak. But it's either poor people, slaves, people of color, people who have no support within the community. This is a group of Bedouins coming to see the Prophet ﷺ for the first time, and they are becoming critical of the community of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. فاستخفوا بهم لرثاثة حالهم, because they were so poor, they had no status in society as such, and yet the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was literally getting them the closest to him. The verse was revealed to really address those people. That's not an Islamic attitude. لا يسخر قوم من قوم. We do not mock in this deen. Community, we do not mock each other. So that's the first disease that can undermine a community, that you mock each other. And then the next disease, the Quran says وَلَا تَلْمِزُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ وَلَا تَلْمِزُوا أَنفُسَكُمْ, and do not insult each other. Do not insult each other. Now, what is the difference between the first one and the second one? What is the difference between sukhriya and al-lams? السخرية بالتصريح واللمز بالتلميح. Sukhriya is very obvious, is very direct, like the people of Tamim coming to the Prophet ﷺ very clearly saying, who are those people that you're sitting with? Very clearly. Al-lams is a little bit, tactical, it's a bit implicit. Aisha radiallahu anha gives us an example. قالت يا رسول الله حسبك من صفية أنها كذا وكذا. Safiya was one of the wives of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. She was short, right? Aisha radiallahu anha, she was trying to somehow disqualify Safiya in the Prophet's eyes. She said, Ya Rasulullah, can't you see that she's too short? حسبك من صفية كذا وكذا تعني أنها قصيرة. She says, look at Safiya, she is too short. And she did not even mention the word short. She just indicated. The Prophet ﷺ says, والله لقد قلت كلمة لو مزجت بماء البحر لمزجته. By Allah, you have uttered a word, and she didn't even utter the word, but she indicated. But the Prophet identified this as a word, as if she had said it, but it's so implicit. By Allah, you have said a word. If it was mixed with an ocean, it would have polluted that ocean. لو مزجت بماء البحر لمزجته. That is lams. So lams is not direct, it is indirect. That is the second disease. So the Quran tells us the first disease, that is sukhriya, obvious mockery. The second is lams, that is indirect insultation. And then the Quran introduces the third one that we do in front of each other. وَلَا تَنَابَزُوا بِالْأَلْقَابِ. Do not throw nicknames at each other. تنابز بالألقاب, that means أن تدعو إنسانا بلقب يكرهه. To call someone with a title or a nickname that they don't like. There is a hadith that explains this. A man with the name of Thabit ibn Qais, who lived with the Prophet ﷺ in Medina. Thabit ibn Qais had a hearing disorder. كان عنده وقر في أذنه. He had a hearing problem, a hearing issue. So the Prophet ﷺ would often, even if in the masjid, people are sitting, the masjid is full, the Prophet would make sure that he gets closer to him so that he can hear properly. So there was some sort of extra accommodation to Thabit ibn Qais. So once upon a time, Thabit ibn Qais comes late to the prayer. And the Prophet ﷺ was sitting, given a speech, was standing, given a speech. Thabit ibn Qais comes to the masjid and he says, تفسحوا, تفسحوا, make a space for me. Until he reached the Prophet ﷺ, حتى أتى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. وكان بينه وبينه إنسان. At this very point, there was only one single person between Thabit ibn Qais and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Thabit ibn Qais said to this man, "Tafassah, make a space for me." The man who was not known, we don't know much about him, we don't know him actually. The hadith does not mention the name of this person. That person did not look at Thabit ibn Qais and he said to him, قَدْ أَصَبْتَ مَجْلِسًا فَجْلِسًا. This is, you found a space, sit in this space. Thabit ibn Qais sat down. He was fuming. مغضبا. فلما انتهى رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. Thabit ibn Qais said, من هذا? Who is this person? Who is this person who did not allow me to sit next to the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم? فسمعه الرجل. That man heard Thabit ibn Qais. He said, أنا فلان ابن فلان. He said, I am, he named himself, I am Fulan, the son of Fulan. I am such and such. Thabit ibn Qais said, Ibn Fulana, are you the son of that woman? And that's it. That's all he said. He did not even name, he didn't say anything beyond that. But what he knows, he knows what he was trying to do. The woman, that mother of that companion, she did not have the greatest history. She did not have a great reputation. Thabit ibn Qais was literally trying to remind the people of who his mother was, by way of putting him down. And the only thing he said, Ibn Fulana, are you the son of that lady? That's it. The Prophet ﷺ did not let this pass. He said, Ya Thabit, انظر حولك ماذا ترى? Look at the people around you. What do you see? He said, Ya Rasulullah, أرى الأبيض والأسود والأحمر. He said, I see the black and the white and the light skin, everyone. You've managed to get a community that is so mixed and so diverse. The Prophet ﷺ says, ذَلِكَ لِتَعْلَمَ أَنَّ أَكْرَمَكُمْ عِنْدَ اللَّهِ أَتْقَاكُمْ. This is for you to know that in the eyes of Allah, the best of you is the one who is most mindful of Allah. And this is something that is not visible. You can't tell. You cannot tell from the color, you cannot tell from the background, you cannot tell from the race, nothing. Only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has access to this. So this verse identifies 3 common diseases that up to this very moment we have as a Muslim community. As-sukhriya, obvious mockery, still very common. Even though the Quran addressed this very clearly 14 centuries ago. Implicit mockery, that is a lams. At-tanabuzu bil-alqab. How many times do we throw names, nicknames at each other? Then the Quran says, بئس الاسم الفسوق بعد الإيمان. What a a horrible situation for you to replace the iman that you have accepted with the fusuq of your tongue. So you've literally earned a new title, that is the title of a fasiq. That is the complete opposite of a mu'min. وَمَنْ لَمْ يَتُبْ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الظَّالِمُونَ. If you don't give this up, you are absolutely the wrongdoers. These are three common diseases that we still have again amongst our communities, that we do literally in front of each other. The Quran reminds us of this very clearly. The next verse gives us and takes us into three other diseases that we do behind each other's backs. Gossiping, backbiting, and assuming bad assumptions, having bad assumptions about people. Inshallah, we look into those in our next khutbah. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والعاقبة للمتقين ولا عدوان إلا على الظالمين إن الله وملائكته يصلون على النبي يا أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد في الأولين صل على سيدنا محمد في الآخرين صل على سيدنا محمد في الملأ الأعلى إلى يوم الدين اللهم حبب إلينا الإيمان وزينه في قلوبنا كره إلينا الكفر والفسوق والعصيان واجعلنا من الراشدين ربنا لا تؤاخذنا إن نسينا أو أخطأنا ربنا ولا تحمل علينا إصرا كما حملته على الذين من قبلنا ربنا ولا تحملنا ما لا طاقة لنا به واعف عنا واغفر لنا وارحمنا أنت مولانا فانصرنا على القوم الكافرين وأقم الصلاة إن الصلاة كانت على المؤمنين كتابا موقوتا.
مباركا أينما كنت وأوصاني